Hi, we're discussing the Koine Greek verbal system with a focus on the indicative mood and using the verb luo, which means I loose, as the example. Verbs have 5 characteristics. These are mood, tense, voice, person, and number. Mood is the manner in which the speaker relates the verb to reality or the attitude of the speaker. There are 5 moods. The indicative mood is a statement of fact or declaration. The imperative mood is a command. The subjunctive mood is a statement of contingency. The infinitive mood expresses the verbal idea without limiting it to person or number. And the optative mood is a polite request. Tense is made out of 2 components, aspect and time. There are 6 tenses. These are present, future, aorist, imperfect, perfect, and pluperfect. The 3 aspects are imperfective, perfective, and stative, and the 4 time periods are the pre-past, past, present, and future. Now, a verb with an imperfective aspect is an ongoing or progressive action. Whether this happens in the past or the present will determine whether it is an imperfect or present tense. A verb with a perfective aspect is a holistic or completed action, and whether this happens in the past or the future will determine whether it is an aorist or future tense. And a verb with a stative aspect is a completed action in the previous period that has an impact in the current period. Whether this happens in the pre-past or the past will determine whether it is a pluperfect or perfect tense. Voice is the way the grammatical subject of a verb is related to the action of the verb. There are 3 voices. The active voice is when the subject performs the verb, the passive voice is when the subject suffers the action of the verb, and the middle voice is when the subject is involved or interested in the verb. Note, there are many ways of translating the middle voice. Now, person is the perspective of the event being described by the verb. The first person is from the perspective of the speaker. This corresponds to I in the singular or we in the plural. The second person is from the perspective of the addressee. This corresponds to you in the singular or you in the plural. And the third person is from the perspective of others. This corresponds to he, she, or it in the singular or they in the plural. Number is just whether the person is singular or plural. Now, putting it all together, we have all the forms of the indicative third person singular for luo, which means I loose. And you can see that in English, there are many auxiliary words such as I, is, was, being, been, that tell of its voice and tense. But in Greek, it's all just one word. Notice that some passive and middle forms share the same spelling. Only context will determine whether it is in the passive or middle voice. So how are these verbs formed and spelt? Well, verbs are made out of morphemes. Morphemes are simply bits of a word put together to form the whole word. These are similar to, in English, prefixes, suffixes, and infixes. We will go through each morpheme. The stem or the lexical morpheme carries the fundamental meaning of the word. In this case, it's the lambda upsilon, lu. The endings indicate the person and number. They also indicate the time period in which the action was performed. If it's a primary ending, it's in the present and future time, or secondary ending, it's in the past time. The historic augment epsilon, which acts as a prefix, indicates that the verb happened in the past time. Note that the pluperfect is just the past version of the perfect. Consonantal reduplication is when the first consonant of the stem is duplicated. In this case, it's duplicated as a lambda epsilon la. This indicates it is in the perfect or pluperfect tense. Furthermore, for the active voice, there is a kappa and kappa epsilon iota infix that tell it's a perfective aspect. The passive morpheme theta eta indicates the passive voice when the form is not shared by the middle voice. And the future time morpheme sigma indicates future time. Now, putting it all together, we have all the indicative forms of the Greek verb to loose. And using lousethetai as an example, we can see it is made out of 4 components. Lu, which tells me the meaning loose. The, which tells me the passive voice. Sigma, which tells me the future tense. And the etai, which tells me it's in the third person singular. This is translated as he will be loosed. Thanks for listening.